Last week, I got hacked. And not in the cool cyberpunk way, with the neon lit alleyways. There were no rogue AIs or mysterious figures in trench coats, furiously typing while green code runs across the screen. You know the scene? No, none of that. I wish. In my experience, it looked a lot more like panic and password resets and support tickets, waiting and being on hold for hours, and having a rapidly growing appreciation for two-factor authentication. But the experience did remind me that I've always loved the cyberpunk genre, and I haven't really spoken about it here. So let's do just that. First, a little history. So cyberpunk is a relatively new genre, and it really examines that intersection with things like technology and identity, power, control, and the future, obviously from a very dystopian angle. It asks what happens when our lives become more digital, and what happens when systems around us fail or get corrupted, often by hacking, or get used against us. So in honor of my recent experience with the less glamorous side of technology, I thought I'd share some of my favorite films, my favorite cyberpunk books, and my favorite cyberpunk stories together. So, let's begin with the book that started it all. We have to go all the way back to 1984. And the book is called Neuromancer. It was written by a man named William Gibson. If cyberpunk has a founding text, this is it. And it was written also by a Canadian, I should mention, as I'm also Canadian. It imagined the rise and fall of the internet 5 years before the World Wide Web. Really amazing. It's crazy that it was written before public internet even existed, but somehow Gibson really imagined this cyberspace. It was a term that he actually invented, or he's credited with inventing these digital identities, hackers navigating this virtual world, and how a powerful artificial intelligence or series of intelligences would be lurking behind the scene. Sound like today? Well, this was written in 1984. The novel really succeeded also in creating what we might call a mood. It's one of the most poignant aspects of the genre, cyberpunk, and this novel really did that for the first time. This novel follows the main character named Chase, who's this washed up hacker, and he's hired for this one last kind of impossible job. Classic trope, right? But along the way, we meet criminal syndicates and these corrupt and powerful corporations, and we really get to see what are called cybernetic enhancements. It's really some of the coolest prose in science fiction as well. A lot of modern hacker culture also owes a debt to this book. The idea of entering cyberspace, navigating digital realms, confronting the hidden powers behind the screen. A lot of it starts here with Neuromancer. So even today, 40 years later, Neuromancer still feels futuristic. Next, let's look at what has probably become the most famous entry in the genre, at least from the book's perspective. And this is Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep? This one was written by Philip K. Dick, great writer as well. If Neuromancer gave cyberpunk its kind of distinctive aesthetic, this book really provided it with what we might call the concrete philosophical foundation. It was released a decade and a half before Neuromancer in 1968. So this was before cyberpunk was even a genre. But Philip K. Dick asks a beautiful question, a series of beautiful questions really, but one in particular we're still grappling with today, even if we don't know it. And that's, what makes someone human? Can an android or robot be human? Do they dream? Do they dream of sheep, of electric sheep? The story follows this bounty hunter named Rick Deckard, and he's tracking down these escaped androids who look, think, behave almost exactly like people, but they're not. They're not human, or we don't know exactly. We're not really told what exactly is an android, how it started. We know little bits and pieces, but that uncertainty, that lack of knowledge is essential for us to go on this real human experience. The hacking connection here may be a little less concrete, but on a philosophical level, the idea is really about cracks in our proper world. And I think that really relates. It really challenges your notions of identity, memory, authenticity, themes that become central for cyberpunk decades afterwards. So if you've ever wondered whether consciousness can be simulated or memories define our identity, or whether technology can change what it means to be human, then you're already thinking like Philip K. Dick. He really is one of the greatest sci-fi writers, one of my personal favorites. I highly recommend this one as well. Now, the next book here is really a fun one, and you've probably heard of it maybe from the film adaptation that is quite popular, quite famous in recent years, Ready Player One. This book jumps away from questioning reality more into just
what does it look like to live in the virtual world? And it's a much newer one than the other two that we've talked about. It was written, I believe, in 2011, but it imagines this future where people escape really a dystopian reality as well by plugging into what is called the Oasis, or this kind of, we might call the metaverse, a massive online universe full of games and puzzles and pop culture and Easter eggs. You've probably heard that term before as well. Um, when I look at the modern landscape of online games and gambling and that kind of thing, this novel really does feel quite prescient. But the hacking element here is everywhere, right? It's really an important part of the story. Though in this case, it's the good guys who are kind of hacking a lot of times. So, it just shows both sides of the story, I guess. But I read this novel really as at least in part, kind of a love letter to tech and games and nerd culture. But the truth is, it's also a very surprisingly thoughtful one about things like inequality or unchecked corporate control, or simply just how much of our lives are lived online. So if you've ever wondered what it would be like to live in a VR world or like the metaverse, like I say before, maybe outsmart a few corporate overlords along the way, I think you'll absolutely enjoy this book. Now to the films. Seeing as we already mentioned the book that this movie is based on, let's start with Blade Runner. Blade Runner is a fantastic film, personally one of my favorites. It's a great example of, uh, you know, a, a film adaptation. Not that it was accurate, and I'm not particularly interested in the accuracy for most types of film adaptations because it's a different medium, right? But it became its own work of art, very different from the source material, but great. Now, when people picture cyberpunk, they often are picturing many of the tropes that were popularized in this particular movie. The neon signs that you see everywhere, the giant corporations with almost limitless reach and power, and the never-ending rain. That's another big trope in this. Tears in the rain. Ah, Rutger Hauer's performance is great in this film, and Harrison Ford does an excellent job as well. But in particular, there's a monologue, Tears in the Rain monologue. If you haven't seen it, it's really some great art. But I have so much to say about Blade Runner. It's probably one of my favorite films in this genre, but I'll be brief here because that's not what this is about. The overwhelming feeling that technology has advanced while society and human nature remains kind of more ancient is really a big theme here. And it's fascinating, it's terrifying at the same time. Of course, the lighting, the aesthetic of this film are great. It's iconic for a reason. But when you read old science fiction, it often feels more clean and optimistic, retrofuturism, right? And that's great, but Blade Runner adds that layer of darkness that I think we love and appreciate in that genre. It's more messy, urban, corporate, right? Evidently, the film wasn't really initially a big success, but it's now become one of the most influential science fiction movies of all time. And the 2017 sequel, which stars Ryan Gosling, Blade Runner 2049, is also really exciting. It's really well written, really well shot. I would argue, in some ways, is probably better than the original. Now, that isn't to say the story's better necessarily, but you could make that argument. It's a really, really great film. I think it's underrated. Usually making a sequel to a beloved classic is a terrible idea, but I mean there are of course exceptions like the Terminator or the Dark Knight or maybe Shrek. I don't know. Titanic 2, just kidding. That one's not, obviously. But Blade Runner 2049 is great. The script writing is superb, the film is gorgeous, and it doesn't really imitate the original, which is amazing. So smart of them not to do that. It examines themes that were touched on in the original, but Denis Villeneuve, who's another Canadian, great director, just does such a good job of exploring some of those initial ideas, and the acting is wonderful too. Ryan Gosling, another Canadian. I mean, man, we're killing it today. So it's really a great film. Anyways, I also wrote an essay on this film for a screenwriting elective once, so maybe I'll have to see if I can find that and post it in Substack or something. But anyways, this is one of the rare cases where the follow-up genuinely earns a place with the original. Now, to find another subgenre that really does the whole cyberpunk thing extremely well, we have to fly all the way over to Japan. Anime is a style of Japanese animation that started really in the early 20th century. It was influenced by Western video animation and whatnot, but it's a massive industry today for those of you who don't know about it. You've probably heard of it, but right in the middle, before it became this global sensation, we have what we might call the golden age of Japanese anime in the 1980s and 90s, where it produced some of the greatest art in film and some of the greatest cyberpunk aesthetics in any medium came from that particular period of time. Now, the first one that I want to look at today is actually originally a manga, which is like a graphic novel, which is also excellent. It's called Akira. You've probably heard of this before. In many ways, this work gave Cyberpunk its energy, pure energy. Released in 1988, Akira helped to introduce anime to kind of the global audience, and it's set in this Neo Tokyo of the future after this huge catastrophe. It's got like this political unrest and government experiments and youth rebellion and tech anxiety, all the things Japan was going through at the time in this one unforgettable story. And the hacking connection here is not maybe so direct as some of the other ones we've looked at, but the ideas are nonetheless really compelling. It's a great story about institutions losing control and governments with big secrets and how technology can kind of be a good thing, but it could also unlock new uncontrollable powers nobody really understands. This is a really incredible film visually as well, and it really has become a much watch, I think, in this genre. So there's a reason people are still talking about Akira 40 years or nearly 40 years after its release. And my second choice for the anime cyberpunk genre here is one of my personal favorite films. This is a really beautiful film as well, visually, but it's really also very hacker related. So I think it's the one we have to talk about. It's called Ghost in the Shell. Honestly, if you only watch one cyberpunk film after this video, um, if you're interested in anime, make it Ghost in the Shell. I'm really partial to subtitles over dubbed versions, I should say, but I don't want to be like the taste police or anything on this channel, so just take my view for whatever you will, but I do think it makes a big difference listening to it in original language. But anyways, this is another spectacular film visually. It really asks some great questions, some of the biggest questions in the genre, but things like if your body is replaced with machinery, are you still you? If your memories can be manipulated, what remains of your identity? If consciousness can exist digitally, then what does it even mean to be human? Really interesting questions. And something that we should probably ponder as we move forward. The influence of this film is really hard to overstate. It's hard to, I mean, the creators of The Matrix often talk about how important this was to them when they were crafting their story. So I think once you watch this film, you'll notice the fingerprints everywhere. And it's really directly about hackers, right? That's super relevant. So, thoughtful, philosophical, visually beautiful. It, probably one of the purest expressions of cyberpunk on the silver screen. So, great one. But the final one here is going to be no surprise to anybody. This is probably the first one that came to mind when we mentioned hacker, cyberpunk, and film. And that is The Matrix, of course. This is the film that introduced an entire generation to cyberpunk, right? Though it was released before I was born, its influence on my generation is also really immense. For many people, I think this is their gateway drug to this genre. And the hacker connection here should be obvious to everyone who's seen it, but the protagonist, Neo, is literally a hacker. Oh my god, it just occurred to me too that Keanu Reeves is also Canadian. Man, we're killing it today. So that's amazing. We're really dominating uh, this cyberpunk list. So Canadians, cyberpunk writers, actors, directors, who'd have thunk, eh? Anyways, um, underneath the surface on this one, it's really about questioning reality itself. The red pill and the blue pill, these have literally become internet slang at this point, often in a lot of very niche circles, but it's very popular too. I mean, the story is about systems of control on one level, sure. It's about waking up and the structures that shape our lives without our awareness, realizing that they're there, you know. But the reason that The Matrix, I think, became such a phenomenon is that it's a great action film as well. So it's got that deep philosophy. But you can also just enjoy it for the fight scenes or the leather jackets, groundbreaking visual effects, you know, just the overall ambiance, right? It's very entertaining. But underneath all of that, it's genuinely a fascinating set of questions about freedom and identity and truth. And honestly, the first trilogy, even this, they go a little bit more into the philosophy. Very interesting. This is a great one. Now, before we wrap up here, there are two major cyberpunk novels I would be remiss not to mention. Many people are constantly recommending them to me. The first is Snow Crash, and the second one is Altered Carbon. People whose taste I trust keep recommending these books to me, so they're near the top of my reading list. And if you read them, or you know, I'd love to know your thoughts, or if there are any other cyberpunk novels that I should read or films I should watch. I'd also love to hear about those as well. But in conclusion here, cyberpunk is often described as this this high technology but low quality of life type genre. But I think the genre is really, even though there is that combination where you have like these very high tech but like low quality of life type cyborg people living in the Kowloon walled city in the of the future, like that kind of vibe is very common in cyberpunk. I think the genre is really about the collision between human beings, and these complex inhuman systems that we create, right? Technology changes things. It also changes us in some ways, but in other ways we remain human. And the questions remain, right? Who controls information? What makes us human? How much of our identity exists online versus has to exist only in the embodied form? There are so many questions that are just absolutely fascinating and worth exploring 100% when it comes to cyberpunk. It's a great genre. So yeah, so I think how can we say wrapping this up here? It's I hope this I hope this video was helpful, right? Like and comment and subscribe if you like this, and um, don't click on any fake sponsorship scams. Keep reading, stay away from hackers unless they're Keanu Reeves, in which case you'll probably be fine. Just don't mess with his dog, um, in that case. And I hope that this video gave value and that you guys enjoyed it. I was a little bit more experimental this time, but let me know what you think. And until next time, happy reading, fellow readers.